This morning I want to invite you to the book of Joshua chapter 3. The sixth book of the Old Testament. The third division beginning from verse 1 to 3. Then Joshua rose early in the morning and they set out from Acacia Grove and came to the Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they crossed over. So it was after 3 days that the officers went through the camp, and they commanded the people, saying, when you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests and the Levites bury it, then you shall set out from your place and go after it. This morning I want to speak to you on a time, as we are almost home. The book of Joshua happens to be the sixth book of the Old Testament. Six, not because it happens to be the sixth book to be written. Six, because of the theme that is contained within the book of Joshua. The book of Joshua is written by whom the name of the book is beard. Joshua the son of Nun, who was the successor of Moses. And the book of Joshua comes into play as a connecting link between the Exodus and the time period of the Judges. Many scholars have even summarized the book of Joshua to be the book of settlement. And there are key things that come out of the book of Joshua, of course, that concerns today's message. And one of the things that stands out in the book of Joshua is the faithfulness of God. That's one of the key motifs or key themes that come out of the book of Joshua. And it's quite fascinating when you consider this concept of the faithfulness of God throughout the book of Joshua. That the contingency of the faithfulness of God is not on God, but it's on man. God is the constant in his faithfulness. Simply put, irregardless of the behavior and the conduct of the children of Israel throughout the book of Joshua, because the faithfulness of God was not dependent upon Israel, God still chose to be faithful. The children of Israel would turn their backs from time to time, but God still continued to be faithful. Because Joshua seems to communicate that the faithfulness of God is not dependent upon his children,
siulimburuki wakarunga kabisikudemena
but upon God Himself.
nye mwakarunga mwene
I wish I was talking to somebody
asame wakaza nga wakuyungisa gumwe
who well knows that you have not been praying as you are supposed to.
awo wadi wanaona sowenga pekandere nga mungu wapira
But
kandere
because God is faithful,
yes karunga mulimburukwi
He has protected you.
akika kupopera
I wish I was speaking to somebody
ngalo kwa kuyungisa
who
gumwe
has not been eating his or her chunks and patties as he or she was supposed to.
akego adili kulya nga mumya wapira kulya nye yake
But God did not bring cancer in your life.
nye karunga kapigarita obera ukanteri
I
miparo
wish I was speaking to somebody
amengonya gana uyungisa
where you were driving at speeds that you are not supposed to.
omungo singi spute sa
But because God is faithful,
yes karunga
He helped you arrive to your destination. It's not because you have been a good parent. It's not because you have been a good driver. It's not because you have been a good Christian. But because God is faithful, He stands true and He blesses you. And so one key theme that comes out of the book of Joshua, that irregardless of our conduct and behavior, because God is faithful, God has done it for us. I'm speaking to somebody. You know you have been in that abusive relationship that you have not supposed to. But God took you out alive. You know you have not been giving towards the Lord's cause and being faithful to Him in terms of tithe and offering. But you still have your job and God has promoted you. So it is the conduct and the behavior of God to bless us anyhow, even if we are not faithful. So this is God that we serve. He blesses us even when we are not faithful. Not for us to continue in our unfaithfulness, but to wonder, what type of a God is this? Who has been so patient with me? What type of a God is this that has been so faithful towards me? And so this is the God of Joshua that Joshua presents. Apart from that, the book of Joshua has equally this theme of completion or culmination. Simply put, the book of Joshua is a book of fulfillment. The Bible tells us to say that the 40 years of the wanderings of the children of Israel, God adjourns that plight, and He settles His children in the land of promise. And this motif seeks to remind us that we serve a God that will stick true to His promises, to make an end to what He has promised and begun. This is a God who says, I would rather finish something than begin it. I would rather culminate something than commence it. Rest assured, although you might be in the process where the future might seem bleak, although there might be light at the end of your situation, the book of Joshua seemingly seeks to remind us God will make an end. Yes. God will promise. God will settle you in the job that you have been looking for. God will settle you in that season of prosperity that you have been hoping for. Because He is a God of culmination. And the first thing that I want us to understand and appreciate here quickly is that the Bible opens up chapter 3 by saying, the children of Israel camped at Shittim for 3 days, waiting for the spies who went out to survey the land. And once they received a report of the land, they then went to the Jordan and camped there additional 3 days. So you ask yourself a question, but why? Remember, the spies were coming from the direction where they were headed to. But the text tells us they waited for the spies in Shittim before they reached the Jordan. And when the spies brought a good report, that's the time where they said, now we can go to the Jordan. Even when they arrived at the Jordan, they still camped there 3 additional days. It's a waste of time. Why could they not just wait for the spies at the Jordan? Because the spies were already coming from the direction which they are headed. You see, it was important for the children of Israel to wait for the spies at Shittim. Because you will notice, it is the tendency of God at times to motivate His children before they arrive at the point of trouble. So that when they arrive at the point of trouble, they might remember that the Lord will sustain and has promised that He will make a way for us. Because had the children of Israel waited for the report at Jordan, even though it would have been a good report, the children of Israel would have asked, thank you for the good report, that we are able to conquer the giants. Thank you for the good report. It's a land filled with milk and honey. But the question is, how are we going to cross this Jordan? And so God said, before they arrive at the Jordan, I will motivate them and Shittim, so that when they come to the Jordan, they might remember the promises of God in Shittim, so that the promises of God carries them through the Jordan. I'm speaking to someone who might not understand why at times we sing burdens are lifted at Calvary. I'm speaking to somebody who might not understand and make sense as to why at times we motivate people even when they are not in trouble. Because God is well aware that although things might be well in this season of Shittim, because of the fragility of life, you will come to the point where you will remember that sermon, where you remember that prayer, where you remember that word, where you remember that promise, because that's the only thing that will make sense when you come to Jordan. So some people say, I don't know, it's not even a funeral. Why are we singing these sad songs? And then no one is going through a tough time. Why messages of encouragement? Because God knows that there is a Jordan ahead of the Shittim. And before you arrive at the Jordan, God will make sure He slips in a verse, He slips in a message, He slips in a prayer, so that when you get to the Jordan, you remember that God will take care of you. Whatever the test or the trial may be. That's the God that we serve. And so God motivates the children of Israel in Shittim before they arrive at Jordan, so that the promise of God
iponya setumbi
the
dira karunga
motivation of God
ekora ngendo lya karunga
might carry them through the Jordan.
oli basimbe dokoko Yordan.
When you equally look at the journey and the plight of the children of Israel in road to Canaan,
Seno taruranye nzira zoa Israel ko igabagola Canaan
you will understand
oitukai kwatengana
that the distance from Egypt to Canaan, the shortest,
asi nzira zokutunda mu Egypt oze ko Canaan azo nsupi onene
is roughly about 2 weeks.
asi no kuvura kusigenda tukuivike ibali.
But God says, as they were going out,
Ye karunga ta utananya singamo bakwege
we are not going to take the shorter route, which was called the route of the Philistines.
aso seka petka simba nzira zonsupi zinga tumbra so Filistine
We are going to take the route of the wilderness,
atka gusa nzira zomburudu
which took the children of Israel 40 days to get to the Jordan.
ezabasimbire bana wa Israel no mazuwa murongo ne
And you ask yourself,
magato kuranya moge
why is it at times
asinge yakara po iro imwe
that God takes longer routes
asi karunga gusa no nzira dononde
in order for us to arrive at our points of destination?
epotka vureka siga ko mabango get ko yagero
Of course, the Bible tells us
yosili pipe wa kutandera
that God chose that way
askarunga ka horo ere nzira zina
primarily because the children of Israel were not trained in war and polemology.
asiye si bana wa Israel ka pa dewire mo yita
Because when they see war, they might be discouraged to go back to Egypt.
yes bana mona yita fura iba guse kuma
But secondary,
ano
God chose the longer way
karunga ka kusire nzira donde
because He knew
yes akika ikivire
the longer it takes for them to arrive to Canaan,
urena iba kusa bakasike mokene
the more time they spend together with God.
yemo siroso sire na obrakara kumenya
And so
karunga
that's why sometimes God takes long
iponya sikarunga iro ime
to
kusa
answer our prayers,
atulimburure makandiro
to
getu
give us the breakthrough,
ipo atupe
to open the door,
ipo atuzekere
because He wants to spend time with you.
yes ahara ukari no siro kumeno
The problem with the children of Israel today is
ano digo bana wa Israel nena
they quickly want to arrive at Canaan.
au simbo baraka sike
They want to arrive swiftly to the point of answered prayer. And in the process, when they get early into Canaan,
apana kasikanye mokene
they forget the God who led them into Canaan.
awa dibara ya karunga ka
And
pitse
God said, lest you forget me,
iponya sikarunga
that I'm the one who gave you the breakthrough.
samenya minampa matompo
I'm the
kaga
one who opened a door for you.
amenya minamze kwira mavero waga
We'll go the longer road.
onito simbinye nzira zonde
That's why the Africans would say,
yonya uyinge mu Africa
if you want to walk far,
seno hara kuza kore
walk together.
gendeni kumwe
It might be slow,
braikarasi
But you-
maranga yengoza ure
but if you want to walk fast,
yeseno hara kugenda usimbu
walk alone.
genda
And so
nywerike
God says,
iponya sikarunga
we
kutanda
are not going to walk alone.
kapitaka genda
You
nywerike
get there fast
katika simba
and
kwina
forget
usimbu
I am the God that led you.
akadibaranya samenya
But
mekaruka
we are going to walk far.
yenda tukagiza ure
That's why it's taking long for you to get the job.
iponya siya kugusira siroso siri ogwanerugana
That's why it's taking long for you to get the promotion.
ipoya kugusira siroso siri ogwanezeru komerugana
That's why it's taking long for the answer to be given.
iyo yakugusira siroso sire ipobavure kulimbure
Because
kandero
God knows the
Yes.
longer it takes,
yesikarunga diasi ure na igusa
the more time you spend together.
izo siroso sire
So God says,
okara kumwe na karunga
we are
kutana
going to take the longer road.
tatika kusanya nzira
And
zonde
interestingly, verse 17, the Bible tells
anongo
us,
beliso murongo na ntambali bibeli wakutandara nyengezi
as they were crossing,
asingamomo bati aburukire
God told the children of Israel,
karunga tatandire bana wa Israel
you need to cross with everything.
asimaye pakutagurukana nkenye imwe
When the Jordan was opened miraculously,
apa Yordan wasize kwirenye pasitetu
they crossed with their wives.
abatagurukana bagolikani
They
babo
crossed with their children.
abatagurukana bana babo
They crossed with their substances.
abatagurukana isimba yao
They
nayi
crossed with their animals.
abatagurukana ikorama yao
Dangerous strategy.
ano pitso ndiye gende soso nyolo sponga onene
Because our war veterans like Elder Wamunima will tell you.
Asiye asi no tuisozetu njiwa no akwaite tu anare kweo data wa mnyima ta mjandere.
And the likes of Elder Mazila, they will tell you in military.
Like jandere.
In military.
Asimo kwaita.
When you fight the enemy,
sene kwa kuruane sana mkore.
You usually leave the weaklings behind.
Asitosi ginye okira nkondo gonyima.
We only choose the capable and able men to go and fight. The children remain behind. The women remain behind. The elderly remain behind. The vulnerable and disabled remain behind. Because there is a risk if we go with them. They might be injured or they might die. But God said, as you cross the river, no one remains behind. Nothing remains behind. Cross with everything and everyone. Dangerous, but yet powerful. You see, God knows that if you leave the children behind, if you leave your wives behind, if you leave your substances behind, as you are journeying and forwarding to the battlefield, God knows when you are on the battlefield and you hear the children cry behind, you might be tempted to look behind, and in the process you might die because you lose focus and concentration. Everyone should cross, so that even when the children cry on the battlefield, you might be motivated to fight for your family. But here is the problem. The children of Israel today, they have crossed, but they have left their wives at home. They have crossed, but they have left their children in the world. They have crossed, but they have left their tithe and offering at home. They have crossed all by themselves. And that's why today we have a church filled with pillars of salt like Mrs. Lot. Because people are ever looking behind to see the things that they have left behind. That's why when you call them for evangelism, they won't come. When you ask them to volunteer and sponsor the finances of the church, they won't give. Why? Because they have crossed by themselves and they have left everything behind. But God says, when you cross, nothing remains. Everything ought to cross, so that you do not look back. So, Church of God, please ensure as we are heading and nearing home, make sure that nothing remains behind. Finally, in the interest of time, the children of Israel have now settled. Land has been equally distributed. And we are introduced to this new character by the name of Caleb. And Caleb in chapter 14 comes to Joshua. And he tells Joshua, Joshua, you know 40 years ago,
Awadiwa sinumvura murongone konyima.
How we have been in this place.
Asingapi omuntu akarame bango eli.
And Moses sent us amongst the 12 spies
Ano Moses agatumina
to spy out the land.
bali atare ebango eli.
And we brought a report to the children of Israel who were waiting for us on the other side of the Jordan. And amidst the 10 spies, we were the only ones who gave a good report that we are well and able to conquer the giants. By the grace of God that surpasses all understanding, God will enable us to settle in the land. But the children of Israel refused our report, and they retracted and retreated. But while we were still on that threshold, God made us a promise that rest assured, although God will send you back in the wilderness, 40 years after that, He will bring us to this land. And God, you know how God promised me personally this mountain. Now I have come to claim it. And chapter 14, Caleb comes to Joshua to say, give me this mountain. The Lord will give me strength to conquer the enemies on the mountain, that I might settle on the promise of God. But the question is why, as we close? Because you see, you need to understand, by this time, Joshua equally got a portion of land. But even with the portion that he got, he was not satisfied. He said, give me this mountain. The question is why? If in Oriental times, mountains were not fruitful places. Mountains were stony, rough and rocky. You could not build. They were not fruitful places. Why the mountain, George? Mountains might not have been fertile, but in the Commonwealth of Israel, mountains were significant spiritual places. Because they understood that mountains were geographical places where you could have easy access to God. That's why Moses met God on a mountain. That's why the law was given on a mountain. That's why Jesus Christ pronounced blessing on a mountain. That's why Jesus Christ transfigured on a mountain. That's why Jesus Christ was translated on a mountain. Mountains were meeting places between men and God. And so Joshua said, I know I have the land. I know I have the fields. I know I have the job. I know I have the car. I know I have the child. I know I have health. I know I have wealth. But I am not satisfied with that. Not until I get God. Therefore, give me the mountain. Because when I have the mountain, I can have God who I'll meet on the mountain. You see, as we end the year, beloved, as we are nearing home, God is saying, don't pray for these temporal things. Don't pray for the child. Don't pray for the job. Pray for the mountain. Because when you get the mountain, you will get God on the mountain. And when you get God on the mountain, all the other things will be added upon. And so Joshua said, I'm not satisfied with these things. Not until I get the mountain. You see, that's the problem with many of us. Life has given us so much comfort that we don't see a need for God. That's why many of us have stopped taking church serious ever since we got employed. That's why some of us are not anymore committed after we got married. Some of us have stopped paying tithe and offering after we got the job. Why? Because we have been satisfied with the field. But yet, the mountain still remains vacant. And Caleb says, I'm not satisfied with these things. Because I know these things I can lose them. But give me the mountain. Because when I get the God on the mountain, even when my children die, even when I get retrenched, even when I get divorced, I have the surety that I can never lose my God. Therefore, give me this mountain. Because when I have the mountain, I have God who can provide and provide all my needs. So as we are nearing home and as we are closing off the year, it's a moment for us to reflect that God has settled you in your Canaan. You got the job. You got the marriage. You got the child. You got the health. But the question is, did you get the mountain? Because if not, fight for the mountain. May the good Lord richly bless us.